grace, mercy, love. Our response is to be generous in return. When we give, we encourage God's work in the world. We help change lives. We provide for others in need. We learn to value what is most important. That is why we give.
Any fans of the A&E show Storage Wars? Anybody faithful? Oh, look at those hands. Yeah. You know what I give you credit for? Like you actually own that. All right? I watched for a little bit of time. I'm going to be straight up. I watched it for a little bit, and I was like, oh, man, it's sort of the same thing. If you're not familiar with Storage Wars, it's a group of people. They go in and they bid on these storage lockers. 16 years is coming up. I saw A&E renewed. Come on, let's see if we make this work. A&E renewed their, I want to say subscription, but it's probably just a season, right? Come on, let's go. Where are we at here? Boom. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so Brandy, Ivy, Hester's coming back. Those of you remember Hester is supposedly coming back. The whole premise of the show is all these people go in and they bid on lockers that the storage people have said, all right, you didn't pay your bill, and so now we're just kind of getting rid of your stuff after a year, 5 years, I don't know. And then these people go in and get like 60 seconds to look it over, and then they get in these bidding wars for other people's junk. I've got like a house full of stuff that I seriously wish people would bid on. I don't know about you, but I genuinely wish you know what? You could give me $5 and I could make some, just it all could go for $5, okay? It's interesting, I found out that the storage industry, 10% of us have a storage unit somewhere. The church has one right down the street, so we keep all our off-season Christmas stuff, in case you're wondering. There's nothing really of value there, but it frees up space here. What did I see? It's like they project in 2027 it's going to be 40-something, mid-$40 billion industry. I mean, it's like booming, this kind of thing. And if you think about it, if you had the cash to get into it, it's a beautiful gig. It's just metal cubes, you can advertise all right, we're going to keep it air conditioned, and then you don't got to watch it. I got to watch it. You just got to create 4 walls or a bunch of walls and then charge me out the wazoo to keep my junk there. It's a beautiful gig if you can get it, all right? We're way back. What I want to talk about today is the storage wars that take place in our heart, okay? And Jesus talked about it. He talked about how we use our money, and people get wigged out. Church is one place you don't want me talking about money, and I understand that. It's sort of sensitive. But Jesus talked about it, so I'm going to talk about it. What I want us to understand, though, is that when I talk to you today about being generous, I want you to understand that generosity has less to do with your wallet and more to do with your heart. I don't think generosity starts in your checkbook. I think generosity starts somewhere inside of us determining, hey, what kind of person am I going to be? And it's interesting, when I say I don't think it's the amount. I read the story of a couple that won the lottery, all right? Here's the deal. They won, help me there. They won $178 million, okay? That's a good chunk of cash. I mean, I would take that like any day, twice on Saturday. They won $178 million, and then they gave their 32-year-old son, are you ready? Almost $3 million of it. So here's the story that's sort of wonky to me. They gave their 32-year-old son it was like high $2 million, okay? After 2 years, the son had blown through all of it. Now process that just for a minute. You went through $3 million in 2 years, okay? So what did the guy do? The guy took his dad and his stepmom to court, claiming that they were cutting him off. And they were suing his parents. Because apparently what had happened was, after 2 years, after they blow through the $3 million, The dad and the stepmom had to come to Jesus conversation that said, look, we just can't keep funding this, all right? And they agreed to pay off the son's current debts that he had racked up, which were, you might imagine, if you've blown through $3 million, you might have some other debts. So they said, we're going to pay off your debts, but there's no other money coming. And that led to a very tense birthday party. I can't imagine why that would be a tense birthday party, okay? But somehow somebody said something that somebody didn't like, and so next thing you know, the son takes the parents to court claiming, here's what he said in front of the judge. He said, I saw how their attitude, that's the son speaking about his parents, their attitude changed from being relatively humble to being rather grandiose. They expected the people around them to treat them differently because of their money, okay? Which was absolutely nonsense, but it was a guy trying to get more than $3 million plus out of his parents. You know what the judge did? The judge dismissed and threw the guy out on his nose and said, get out of here, you're wasting my time. Basically, that's what happened. I don't think generosity has anything at all to do with your wallet. I think it has everything to do with our heart and our attitude towards life, towards money, towards our perception of God. And Jesus, you know, if you have a copy, if you open your app, however you get there, in Luke chapter 12, Jesus kind of had to deal with this once. He confronted some people. Let's see, I think I'm going to read you, come on. I thought we were good. We'll go next. Okay. Luke chapter 12 is a story that's it's an interesting one, because in Luke chapter 12:1, meanwhile, many thousands had gathered to hear Jesus. So many people were there, they were trampling over each other as Jesus began to teach his disciples. So, much bigger room than this. Jesus teaching a large crowd. We look, and if you follow along what he was teaching them, he was just saying, hey, be alert for religious charlatans. Be alert for fake religion. It will mess you up, okay? It's my summation of what's going on there. But he's given this warning. And so in the midst of, maybe the closest we could get to would be St. Charles Convention Center. You ever been to the Convention Center? If it's full, there's a lot of people there. The main speaker's up on the stage, and he's giving his talk. And somebody in the far back says, hey, time out. I need you to tell my brother to give me my share of the money. Where would this be coming from? This wasn't the topic Jesus was on. And I just sort of envisioned this guy sitting in the back of the crowd, and he's not hearing anything that Jesus is talking about, but he's stewing because you know what? His parents died, his brother's in charge of the estate, and he's been fighting with the guy for a little bit of time about getting what's his fair share, and the guy's not kicking it over. And it's oh man, you know what? Hey, Jesus. Someone in the crowd, verse 13, said to Jesus, teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Wouldn't have been all that uncommon a thing, because you would often go to the rabbi, you'd go to the local religious guy and say, hey, here's my problem. Can you help me? We got a family thing going on. Can you just give us some advice, what we should do? It's just the guy's literally in front of thousands of people shouting out, I got a family problem. Jesus, can you help me? Will you just tell my brother to share? And Jesus in verse 14 says, man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? Umpire. I umpired softball for the first time yesterday. That's what an umpire does. He looks at a call and he says, safe, out, ball, strike. Someone impartially decides. Hey, who appointed me the judge, the jury, the umpire between you and your brother? Okay? And then he says, I want you to watch out. And I think he's talking to the brother, but I think he's talking to everybody now in the crowd. He says, all right, this guy stole the platform, so let me just give you a principle here. Okay, the principle is, hey, you need to watch out. You need to be on your guard against all forms of greed, because a man's life doesn't consist in the abundance of his possessions. What I want us to note is the guy asked for help. This is what's interesting to me. If you said, what was the guy's problem, if we'd have asked him, what would he have said? He'd have said, the problem is my brother won't share. I'm entitled to something and my brother's not releasing it. That's my problem. Jesus says, no, that's not your problem. The problem is much deeper. You've got a greedy heart. Okay? Because Jesus said, watch out beyond all your forms of greed. And like, where did greed come into this? Guy wasn't saying, hey, unless maybe he was thinking, oh, my brother, yeah, my brother's the greedy one. Yeah, maybe that's the problem. I think Jesus is addressing the guy, and then he's going to say, okay, we're all in here listening, so let's talk about this for a minute. What is greed? What is greed? Could you spot greed? Do you know what greed looks like? Any of you watched the fine show American Greed? I did for a little bit. Interesting. I just can't, it's all a bunch of white-collar crime and people who've like just Ponzi schemes and all sorts of stuff like that. It's like I can't really, I just haven't gotten into that one. But it's fairly popular. It's just on vacation right now when I looked it up, okay? So enough of us are not watching it to demand that it come back, all right? So would you spot greed? Do you know what greed is? If I asked you, are you a greedy person? Do you know somebody who's greedy? Oh, see, all of us know somebody who's greedy. I bet you do. Oh, yeah. If I said to you, are you a greedy person? You might be going, oh, man, not me. And that might be true. Seriously. I don't know. We're gonna peel the onion here. We're going to peel the layers a little bit, and we're going to see if any of this stuff really applies to us. Greed is simply you just want more of what you already got. Okay? Just in its simplest form, it's this consuming drive that you just got to have the latest, the greatest, the best, because here's where I want you to understand is like you believe in having that stuff that gives you, that makes you somebody. That's the hard part, is you think, and that's what Jesus hit on here, your life, who you are as a person, has nothing at all to do with what you own. But we have bought into the mindset that if I have the latest, best, coolest, if I have a bunch of it, see, look at me. And that's the danger, okay? Now, Jesus talked about all kinds of greed. And that was sort of interesting to me because I only think of greed in terms of what? When you hear the word greed, what do you think of? Money. You just got a bunch of money and you just want more money, right? And all you talk about is money, okay? But there are other forms of greed. Would you say, what about, I'm going to pick one here. What about the person who always wants to be in control? Could be in your marriage, could be at work, could be in your neighborhood circle of friends. But you know that one person that always feels like they've got to be in control, they've got to have it their way? What is that? That's a desire to be in charge. What about, have you ever been or had the experience where you've been in a collaborative setting? It could be at school, it could be at work, it's a group effort, but somebody wanted all the credit for the project. And they sort of angled their way, and they sort of verbalized their way, and they sort of pushed their way to the front. That's a form of greed, okay? What about the person that always wants to be acknowledged? Always taking selfies. Always wanting to get themselves out in front of the crowd. Always wanting to look good. That's a subtle form of greed. Believing that, hey, you know what? If all the attention's on me, it's sort of satisfying this deficit that I have in my heart, that I'm not enough. There are a lot of different forms of greed. What about the pursuit of pleasure? What about just that drive to be comfortable? You're never quite sure you're going to have enough because you've got these needs of being comfortable. That might be a form of greed. Jesus says, I'm telling you, big old, if you drive past the sign right out here by the church on a school day, it lights up and flashes when it sees your car. And it says speed limit 20 miles. Jesus has got a big old sign flashing saying, watch out, be on your guard, take note of, forms ways that your heart might gravitate to stuff to make you feel good about yourself, because your life doesn't consist in the stuff you have. Wow. And I can imagine maybe some folks just going, huh. And so then Jesus proceeds to tell them a story. Okay? And before I get to the story, here's what I want us to understand. I've lived with this for a while, and it has been extremely helpful for me. You and I, I'm just going to read it. We give our time, and what I want you to think about is your life. You give your life for pieces of paper and coins with images mounted on it, okay? Or a check, or a direct deposit. But you get what I'm trying to say. You're giving your life for these objects so that then you can take those objects and, as I say here, exchange them for the things you really want. That's what work is. You go work for somebody, they say, I'll give you X dollars, I'll give you X coins, and you need those X dollars and those X coins because you need health insurance, because you need food, because you need a place to live, because you want to have entertainment, because you want to, what? Eat, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. But it does force me to think, if you're going to give your life for this paper and these coins, because that's what you're going to do, you're giving your life for this, are you giving your life for the things you really want? Are you spending your time because you traded it for the money so that you can have, is this what you really want? Because you've spent your life on it. And so what I find interesting here in this story that I'm going to read for you is Jesus never condemns people for having money. Because you know that money is the root of all evil, right? You've grown up with that, right? You understand that, right? No, it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Jesus never condemned wealth. Jesus never condemned being successful. Jesus doesn't condemn this farmer for planning ahead. That's not the guy's problem, okay? The guy's problem, well, let's just read and see if you can pick out what the problem was. So Jesus, after saying, hey, watch out, be aware of this, he tells them a story. He says, a ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. And the guy thought to himself, what am I going to do? I've got no place to store my crops. Here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns, I'll build bigger ones, and there I'll store all my grain and all my goods, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But then God said to him in verse 20, you fool, this very night your life is going to be demanded of you, and then who's going to get all the stuff that you've laid up? Okay? Here's what I want us to understand, if I just get you to think about three things that I think the guy just didn't quite grasp, because I think they still apply to us today. One is simply this, that he mistook his soul for his stuff. That's what Jesus said. Beware that your stuff doesn't define you. But we buy into the notion that it does. I'm just going to ask some questions, not guilt. It's really like, am I the only one who thinks this? Do you ever look at somebody's car and try and deduce from his car what his income is? And we make a judgment based on what we see? Did anybody look at the new homes going down Double D behind the new First Community and behind the soccer fields and see those massive homes down there and go, who's buying those? And if you bought one of them, no offense to that, but I'm like, okay, what kind of jobs are those people got that they're living down? Because those things are mansions, right? Do you ever look at somebody's clothes and make man, they're dressed pretty good. Wow, I wonder what they do, right? Jesus is saying, don't make the mistake of looking at your stuff and thinking you've got nice stuff, so therefore I must be a nice person. That's the farthest thing that we can conclude. I heard the story of guy who was like the wealthy dude in town. He was the owner. He had a couple of very successful businesses in town. And the Chamber of Commerce guy went to him. And he said, hey, mister, and he so-and-so. He said, I'm here representing, we do good things in the community. We're just wondering if we could get just a little check, like you really help us out a lot. And the guy said, it just doesn't look like you've ever given anything. I'm just wondering if this could be the year. And so the gentleman, the successful businessman said, I get you look according to your records and I haven't given anything. Do your records show that like my sister is like a single mom with 2 kids? Do your records show that? Do your records show that my parents are elderly and they're like so-and-so? Do your records show that? And he listed 2 or 3 other things, of which now the Chamber of Commerce guy said, no, man, I'm really sorry, our records don't show that. And the successful businessman said, good. He said, because I don't help them, so what makes you think I'm going to help you? That's a guy who's looking at all this stuff and making some judgments, but it's not that he doesn't have the money to help, he doesn't have the heart to help. And I think when we look at our things that we own and we begin to evaluate our life based on the good life, the American dream, what's the American dream about? American dream is like having what used to be like a garage attached. And now it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, man, we can't afford the American dream anymore. Because we've equated owning stuff as like somehow determining our success. And if I don't own the stuff, I must be therefore not. And it can be a variety of things, right? It can be your bank account, it can be your job title, it can be the car you drive, the house you live, the clothes you wear, where your kids go to school. St. Louis, very much aware. There are different tiers of private education. They're out there, they exist. And I know for a fact that some of them are like, some of the mentality is like, oh yeah, my kid goes to, oh, I can't get in there, right? What was the scandal a little bit ago with the couple that were buying, there was that scam to get your kids into certain colleges? What was that about? You remember what that was about? Trying to get your kids into some preferred colleges, and so there was a money laundering, money something going on, and people went to jail for it. Well, I got some people that are pretty bright, smart people that maybe didn't go. I mean, could we all agree just because you go to a certain school with a certain name on it, doesn't mean you're a certain kind of person, right? I think Jesus would say to us, hey, just be on your guard. That your life doesn't consist in your Apple Watch. Your life doesn't consist in the name on your car or the neighborhood you live in. Your soul is worth more than that. The second thing is he thought life revolved around himself. In my Bible, I've highlighted, there's 12 times here that the guy mentions I, me, my, himself. His world just focused on him. And I think people who are caught in a trap of living for greed don't see other people. All they see is themselves. And if I give it away, what's going to happen? Here's that bunch. If I give, who's going to watch out for me, right? I find it interesting that all our currency says, can you remember what our currency says? Oh, in God we trust. Oh, that's hilarious to me. It genuinely is, because you know you don't believe it. Every time you handle currency, you're handling a piece of paper or a coin that says, in God we trust, but you know you don't. You trust your health. You trust your boss. You trust everything but God. But every day, God, in a subtle, I think almost humorous way, says, hey, who are you counting on here? And this guy was counting on himself. If I asked you, let's problem solve for a second, okay? You've got way more than you know what to do with, right? And you work your tail off for it. Because again, Jesus doesn't say, man, dude, you were a slouch. He doesn't even say, man, you were an overworker and you neglected your family. That's not what he was judged for. So what could the guy have done with all the stuff extra that he had? His conclusion was, I need to build bigger barns. What else could he have done? Think about it. Oh, he could have shared. Could he have gone into town with some of his crops? Could he have sold some of his crops and gone into town with the money? Sat here, trying to help people out. He could have done that. What else could he have done? Could he have invited some people over and just taken? That would be the same idea of sharing. But could he have had a big party? Could he have, see, he had options, but all he saw was himself. And that's a danger if all you see is yourself, because the world's bigger than you. And I'm just going to tell you from my heart that selfish people are often lonely people. Selfish people have fewer friends, if any friends. I've wondered, why is that? Because often selfish people have a lot of means. So wouldn't you think they'd have more friends? Like people would have a lot of stuff, wouldn't they have more friends than less friends? But you know why they have less, right? How many of you like to be around selfish people? Not a hand went up. And I honestly believe that maybe you're out there and you're the one person that's like, oh, I love selfish people. Yeah, all they do is talk about themselves. I love to go to dinner with selfish people because I don't have to talk at all. All I got to do is listen to them. I mean, you know, my best friends are selfish people. You don't do that because you know it. So don't be that person. Don't be the person that is always focused on themselves. Don't be the person that, I've got a couple people in my world. I'm serious. I can start a conversation with a question and I don't have to talk again. You know anybody like that? And like, it's sort of annoying. I mean, really, at some point, like, you know, I feel like Toby Keith, can we just talk about me? You know, that's what it feels like sometimes, right? The third thing the guy did was he lived as though God didn't. He said, I got all this stuff. I got all this time. I want to suggest to you that if you believe that God doesn't exist, that's cool. I mean, I'm saying it with a video. That's cool. I can appreciate that. I'm not going to argue with you over it. And if that is your mindset, then truly live, eat, drink, be happy, spend your stuff any way you want, because tomorrow you die. Which seems really, really sad until you read a headline that said, oh, Hulk Hogan had his day in the sun and he's no longer with us. Matthew Perry had his day in the sun and he's no longer with us. I mean, the headlines are ripe with people that we would say, wow, look at all their stuff, and they're no longer here. And if there's no God, that's the best thing you ought to do, because your day's going to come when you're no longer here. So go live it up. But what if there is a God? There's the question. What if God exists? Then what? What if Jesus and the resurrection are true? I'm just asking you. If Jesus and the resurrection are true, does that change things? I'll tell you one way it should change it for you is now there's an eternity and you're just not going in a 6-foot box. You're going to live forever. And so Jesus is just simply saying, man, he literally calls the guy, he says, you fool, you damned fool. This is not a shot where you get purgatory and a second chance. You had your chance, you live life for yourself, and you missed it because God exists. That very night, your life is demanded, and then who's going to get what you have prepared for yourself? You know why this hits home for me? We're talking to a guy right now about our trust. How many of you have a trust? How many of you have a will? How many of you have a trust? You realize your will I'm finding this out, you still got to go through probate. You still have to go through the court system. Somebody's still going to squabble over my stuff. I'm thrilled because I'm going to leave them junk. Casey's here. She's the only one of my kids that are right here. They're going to fight over my baseball collection, my Coke collection. I mean, that's all they got. Jesus says, who's going to get your stuff? You think you're going to leave it on to your kids. Until I didn't realize that the state gets 7% in probate. 7% for what? For what? What'd they do? They're just going to settle the disputes. And I got to pay them to do that? So we're going to get a trust, I guess. We're trying. We don't know what it is. Only 2 of you raised your hands. You have a trust. Maybe it's not that big a deal. But we got to figure out what's going to happen with our stuff, because I don't want to be this guy. And as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking I don't want to be the guy that Jesus pronounces and says, you idiot, you live life for here and you missed eternity. So what does it look like? Then Jesus, he gives us a second principle here. This is how it's going to be for anyone who stores up things for himself but is not rich towards God. And I continue to ask myself, what does it mean to be rich towards God? I want you to think about what's happening in culture, just from this perspective. I read this week that Intel is giving the Trump administration like 10% or something, like so they can do business. And it's like, feels like every other day there's somebody has given some money to the administration so that they can do business. Okay? I'm not being political. I'm saying that's the landscape in which we're living in, right? Those are the headlines. What are they trying to do by giving money to the administration? Just think about it. What are they trying to do? They're trying to be rich towards, they're trying to get favor from, so that they can get past red tape, so that they can get their product out in the hands of people, because they're business people. And so we pay so we can get this. Okay, well, Warman, are we saying we got to pay God? No, but I am saying that as an illustration of what it's like to try and be rich towards something. Putting my money on ahead towards something. Jesus says, anyone who lives for himself is going to be like, oh, that's bad. The person who's rich towards God. So what is it like to be rich towards God? Let me give you 3 simple ways. If you want to write them down, take note of them, because I think these are ways that I'm trying to live life. One is this, is to invest yourself in people, because Jesus was all about people. I want to invest my time and my energy in the things that matter to God. People matter to God. This can look a lot of different ways, but I think generosity is what that looks like in a nutshell. I'm generous with my stuff and my time towards the people that God cares about. Now, I think I've got a slide here that I'd like to show you that blew me away. Some of you have seen it. If Sean can make it happen. I don't know. There's no guarantee. He told me if I gave him a heads up, he could make it happen.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. I think it's to be, this generosity can take a lot of different ways, but I'm not just thinking about your wallet. Hear me, I told you it's a heart thing. Generous people is coming out of a heart thing. Sean, you pop it up whenever you're ready. Because otherwise I'm going to describe it.
Please don't.
Any moment now. All right. The principle that Jesus gives here is interesting, where he says, I like to think that where the things I love is where I'm going to spend my money. But Jesus sort of flips it, and he says, it's where your money goes, that's where your heart's going to be. The things you spend your money on is where your heart will be. And I think that's true. You spend money on your kids, so it's going to flow there. I was talking to Carrie, right? And she was telling me that you guys have got your daughter
JoJo?
is in volleyball.
Yes,
You paid for volleyball.
we did.
Paid for volleyball, and then you go to a tournament yesterday.
Yes.
And in order to watch the daughter that you paid volleyball already to play,
Yes.
you had to spend more money to just sit on the sidelines and cheer said daughter,
Correct.
along with the siblings
Correct.
who could care less.
Right.
But they all had to pay,
Yes.
right? But you love your daughter, and so you pay money to watch your daughter. This is the mural that's back in the middle school room. And some of you have seen it because we posted it, and Tim's the guy who put this thing together. When Tim was finished, it was interesting to me because I was just in there talking to him, and here's the first thing that I noticed. It was really interesting. All these dots, all these dashes, he's got black dashes and then all these white dashes. Now, forget all this is all well and cool, but I'm looking at all these dashes. That's the first thing, and I thought, every dash was a brushstroke. How many are up there? How many dashes would you say are there? I mean, we're 1,000 easily with the black and the white. All these are individual brushstrokes that one guy did. And so I'm just talking to him about it. And one of the interesting things, and now I'm not meaning to embarrass him, but this is to me what I think generosity looks like. Tim spent 4 days putting this together for the middle school. 4 days that he was in there doing this. And we get to the part where like he's just doing these individual brushstrokes. And I said, wow. And he said, he just stopped me. He said, he just sees each one of those brushstrokes as like a moment in time, like a soul. I said, you don't really think that. Nobody thinks that when they're painting a mural. These are just brushstrokes on a wall. No one's thinking that maybe each brushstroke is unique, like each one of us is unique. And the man thinks that and sees this as like an act of worship. He said, each of these roads are different. And he said, not because I believe that all roads lead to God, but that all of us are on a different path. All of us take different paths to find our way to Jesus. And he wanted to illustrate that in the mural. And again, I was blown away with like that was his thinking in putting together a mural on a wall for the middle school kids. Listen, friends, 4 hours of a skill of thinking of worship, that's heart stuff. Jesus says, where your heart is, your treasure's out here. You're spending your life on something. Spend your life on something that I'm going to say matters. And I think rich towards God means looking at people and saying, God, how can you use me in the lives of people? Because this guy, the farmer, lived for himself. The second way that I think you can be rich towards God, as I'm going to say it, is to give. The first check that we write when we do our budget is our giving check. It's not the last check, it's the first check. And I'll tell you why that's important to us, because we didn't used to be that way. But I very much value what God is doing and wants to do in the lives of people, and it takes funds to do that. I can't say it any other way than that. That's not, you won't hear us beg for money, because I believe God owns it all. And if in God I trust, okay, then I'm not going to beg, but it is okay to say, hey, look, I believe that God is doing things in the lives of people in this church, and it takes funds to do that. And I'm just asking you, where do you think the funds come from? And I get in some places, some denominations, they want to know how much you make. And they're going to send you, we're not going to do that. That's not how I think God wants it. God wants a generous giver. And so this is the first thing we do, so that you know that as a church, that we're giving back over 10% of my salary back to the church on an annual basis. And I say that not to brag, but again, if we're trying to be transparent, you need to know that if I'm up here saying to you that this is worth your thinking about, but Warman's not doing it, that would be hypocrisy. I'm telling you, the Warmans are doing what we're asking others to do. It's just look at where God has given you and write the first check. Make God the first priority in your month, not what's left. And I just would say this to you. I honestly, in my heart, believe that God, that I will never stand before the Lord and say, Lord, I outgave you. Lord, I did more than you. You told me to do this, and the Word told me to be generous, and you weren't generous. I'll never be able to do that. We give because He first gave. You know what love is because He first loved you. If Christ has done anything in your heart and you believe that this church is helping people know Jesus and be better in their walk with God, then will you just join Patty and I and many of the others that are like, hey, we just want to see God glorified in this, okay? The third way that I think that we can we get back to the slide, that we can be generous is 11 people is writing the first check, and then, Gene, I need your help with this. Ian, I need your help with this. Ian was like, hey, man, why do you call me? I need this one. Just so that everybody it's just a card with enough on it. So I think I've got enough for everyone in here. What do I want you to do with this card? I'm going to experiment with this. This is an experimentation for me as well as you. There's 4 pieces, 4 times on your card that the word enough is written on it. When you get home, I'd like you to just separate them. So now you got 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. The word enough is on a card. We are at the end of August, between now and the end of September, over the next month. I'd love for you to carry, depends on what you have, wallet, purse, however you might want to do this. Might just put one in your pocket. Here's what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to look over the course of the next month for opportunities where I might hear God say to me, Mike, that's enough. Like you've already, you want to know what my latest one is? Can we cut the video? No, we can't. I've been looking at buying another set of golf clubs. I just bought another set of gloves. I bought a set of clubs last year. If you're not a golfer, you could care less, and you were already judging me. So I understand that. All right, I get that, right? For some of you, it's a firearm. All right, let's just get off of me, and I'm going to talk about some of you. I know some of you guys with firearms have got like 8, 10, 12, whatever, and I'm like, how many do you need? You got 2 hands. That's all you can fire at any one time. Well, you got 8, you know? So don't judge me on my golf clubs, all right? But I've been looking at another set of golf clubs, and I've been going, you know, I've twice been in a golf shop and like, oh, man. And then I'm like, but you've already got a set. I might pull out a card and just look at it and go, yeah, I've got enough. I don't know. You might be at a conversation, might be talking to some people. Maybe it's a family thing. And there might be a point where you might say to yourself, you know what, I've already spoken enough. You're going to take that, you're just going to fold it in half, and you're going to put it right down there in front of you. It just simply says, you know, I don't need to keep talking. I've said enough. Maybe you're in a disagreement with somebody. And you say, I've said enough. Maybe you've been fighting with a spouse. I've said enough. Maybe you're sitting there and you might say to yourself, you know, I've had enough to eat today. I've had enough. I know I want the ice cream bar that's Haagen-Dazs. That's a mini. That's in my freezer. 15 steps. I can have it. But I might take out a card and say, but you know, I've already had a bowl of popcorn. And I'm diabetic. And this might not be the best thing I can do. I've had enough. I don't know what it'll be for you. But I do know that you and I learning to say enough. Most people who are in debt over their head aren't saying enough. That's your problem. I don't want to make it that simple. It could be one of your issues is you're not able to say enough is enough. And so, as I'm fond of saying, we buy things that we don't need to impress people we don't like. That's a sad way to live. The team's coming up. As they come up, I'll tell you a story of a pastor. He was calling on one of his men, a wealthy businessman. And as the pastor tells the story, it got to be the point in the guys, they're just chatting, and the wealthy businessman said, look out there. He looks out this front window. He says, everywhere, there's a whole bunch of oil wells and stuff going on. He says, everywhere you can see, that's all mine. They step on the front porch, and over here to the west, it was like, oh man, look at all my fields. And he's got cattle over here. That's all mine. He looks out back, and it's a beautiful forest where he hunts from. It's all mine. It's so cool. I'm just so blessed. This is so great. And at one point, the pastor puts his hand on the guy's shoulder, and he says, man, I see everywhere you look. It's all yours. He said, how much do you have up there? And it stopped the guy in his tracks. He said, I've never thought about it. I want you to think about it. Your life is worth more than your possessions. Be a generous person that enlarges others. That person, Solomon said, will be blessed. That's what I want for you. I want you to experience that kind of blessing. Let me pray for us and we're out of here. Father, thank you for the day. Thank you for Jesus, the lover of our souls, who spoke truth to us. Father, we leave here and we go out and, man, we've got to navigate some of the craziness that we see and we hear about. And, man, we got people screaming at us, what's in our wallet? Like that's like the big deal, like the defining thing for us. Help us to see that we are of infinite worth and loved by Almighty God. That Jesus, you not only gave your life for us, but you promised to live beside us. That you would give us wisdom and strength. That you would give us direction. You would give us hope, peace. Lord, may in God we trust not be something that just is on our money, but it's really how we order our lives. And so this we pray in the name of our Savior. Amen. God bless you as you go. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.